You are not waiting for support. You are waiting for permission. Every time you explain your ambition to people who do not share your vision, you hand them a vote over your future. Then you study their faces. You listen for enthusiasm. You search their silence for approval. And when they hesitate, you hesitate. That weakness was not born into you. It was trained into you. You were taught that serious action should begin only after other people agree that your ambition is reasonable. Machiavelli understood the trap 500 years ago, not because he hated human beings, because he watched what human beings actually did when power, fear, reputation, and survival were at stake. Their doubt creates your delay. Your delay creates no proof, and the absence of proof makes their doubt look correct. That is how another person's opinion becomes a self-fulfilling verdict over your life. Steve Jobs broke that cycle after Apple removed him. Airbnb's founders broke it when investors ignored them. Neither won support by explaining harder. They created evidence. Before this video ends, you will identify the person whose reaction still controls you, and you will choose one result you can build within 7 days without his permission. This is not an emotional problem. It is a power problem. Every year you wait to be understood, you lose something that cannot be recovered. Time, position, skill, reputation, money, self-trust. The man who acts gathers evidence. The man who waits gathers explanations. One becomes more capable. The other becomes more articulate about why he has not moved. Eventually, the people who doubted him appear correct, not because they understood his potential, but because his delay produced no evidence against their judgment. Look at the sequence carefully. Ambition becomes explanation. Explanation produces a weak reaction. That reaction creates self-doubt. Self-doubt creates delay. Delay creates no proof. Then the absence of proof is used as evidence that the ambition was unrealistic. The circle closes, and the man begins calling his submission patience. He says he is waiting for the right moment. He says he needs clarity. He says he wants to be responsible. But beneath those respectable words is a quieter truth. He does not want to move while the people around him remain unconvinced. The first gate is not outside you. It is the reaction you anticipate before you act. Why do the people closest to you often resist the new version of you? Because they possess more evidence of your past than your future. They remember what you have repeatedly been. They remember the jobs you accepted, the plans you abandoned, the promises you announced, and the periods when your discipline disappeared. You feel the months of thought behind your decision. They hear a sentence. You feel the force of what you could become. They see the visible record of what you have already done. Machiavelli wrote, "There is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to handle than to initiate a new order of things." He continued that people do not truly believe in anything new until they have had actual experience of it. He was writing about political change, but the mechanism survives in ordinary life. People trust what has already survived reality. They trust the established career, the visible income, the completed body of work, the proven business, the title that other people already recognize. Your imagined future has none of that protection. This does not automatically make your family malicious. It does not mean every friend is jealous. It does not mean every critic is secretly threatened by your potential. That interpretation is emotionally satisfying because it excuses you from examining the evidence. Sometimes people are limited by fear. Sometimes they are protecting their own comfort. Sometimes they genuinely see a risk you have ignored. And sometimes you are not being underestimated. You are still unproven. That distinction is brutal, but it gives you power. If every doubter is an enemy, you can only resent them. If the real problem is an evidence gap, you can close it. Most unsupported men choose the wrong response. They explain more. They describe the business model. They defend the career change. They announce the training plan. They outline the future income. They try to make an unproven future sound inevitable. But every explanation carries a hidden cost. It turns action into a public debate. Now the project must survive criticism before it has produced strength. Every question feels like an attack. Every doubtful expression creates friction. Every joke from a friend enters the room when the man sits down to work. He no longer works alone. He works under an imaginary court of people who have no responsibility for the result. The real issue is not that they fail to understand you. The real issue is that you gave their understanding operational importance. Their opinion became a gate. Their approval became a signal to proceed. Their doubt became a signal to delay. Support becomes a cage when you treat it as permission. A dependent man says, "I will move when they understand." A sovereign man says, "I will consider useful information, then move according to evidence and judgment." He does not need everyone to agree. He needs enough clarity to begin testing reality. If this distinction exposes a pattern you have been hiding from yourself, like this video, subscribe to the channel and write the decision you have delayed in the comments. Do not write a speech. Name the decision. Clarity begins when the excuse is forced into a sentence. But emotional permission is only one form of borrowed power. Machiavelli warned about a more dangerous form. He attacked dependence on borrowed arms because borrowed force serves borrowed interests. It may appear reliable when conditions are easy. Its weakness becomes visible when pressure arrives. Machiavelli wrote, "The arms of others either fall away from you or overburden you or else impede you." Your arms are not physical weapons. They are the assets that allow you to act without emotional or structural permission. Skill, savings, discipline, reputation, distribution, documented results. Alternatives, the capacity to leave. A man who has none of these must borrow confidence from other people. He borrows direction from authority figures. He borrows identity from praise. He borrows status from institutions. He borrows courage from group approval. As long as the room applauds, he appears stable. When the room becomes silent, he discovers that nothing inside him was carrying the weight. Imagine two men starting the same project. The first announces it immediately. His friends praise him. His family calls him ambitious. People congratulate him for a future that does not yet exist. The recognition gives him the emotional sensation of progress. He has received the reward before completing the work. The second man receives little encouragement. He publishes the first piece. He makes the first call. He builds the first prototype. He studies the first difficult skill. His emotional state is less pleasant, but his position is stronger. After 30 days, the first man has recognition without evidence. The second man has evidence without recognition. Which man owns more power? The second, because proof does not disappear when the room becomes silent. Machiavelli wrote, "Only those defenses are good, certain, and durable, which depend only on yourself and your own ability." This does not mean total isolation. No successful ruler, company, creator, or professional operates without cooperation. The point is not to reject allies. The point is to ensure that the collapse of one ally does not erase your ability to act. Accept assistance. Do not build your identity on its continuation. The weak man asks, "Who will support me?" The strategic man asks, "What must I build so that support is no longer decisive?" That question changes the direction of his attention. He stops studying the room. He studies his position. He stops counting encouragement. He counts assets. He stops asking whether people believe in him. He asks whether his skill is improving, whether his work is visible, whether his savings are growing, whether his reputation is becoming stronger, and whether he can continue when enthusiasm disappears. Steve Jobs learned this law through political defeat. He had helped build Apple, but creation did not protect him from losing control. Talent got him into the company. It did not guarantee permanent authority. When he was removed, he could have spent years asking people to reconsider what he had contributed. He could have built his identity around betrayal. He could have made sympathy his strategy. Instead, he built NXT. The pressure was exclusion. The answer was construction. The first evidence was not a speech about what Apple had lost. It was another company, another team, and another body of technology. Years later, Apple acquired NXT, and Jobs returned carrying something more powerful than an emotional argument. He returned with technology the company needed. Do not turn this into fantasy. Not every rejected man returns in triumph. Not every company recognizes what it lost. Not every closed door reopens. The lesson is colder and more useful. Explanations rarely reverse a power relationship. Leverage can. Explanation asks people to reconsider you. Proof changes the cost of dismissing you. That is why sympathy is a weak strategy. Sympathy depends on another person's willingness to revise a judgment. Leverage changes the incentives surrounding that judgment. When your skill solves an expensive problem, when your work attracts an audience, when your results create revenue, and when your reputation opens access, people do not need to understand your private struggle. They respond to the position you built. But leverage seems impossible when you have no money, no title, no network, and no institution willing to back you. This is where unsupported men often return to waiting. They tell themselves that Jobs had resources, connections, and unusual talent. They use the size of his story to excuse the absence of their next small action. Airbnb began with a different kind of pressure. Its founders lacked money and investor support. They could not force investors to understand the company. They could not control the economy. They could not command the market to become ready. They could control whether the company survived long enough to keep learning. So they designed and sold limited edition political cereal boxes. The act looked small compared with the company they wanted to build. It was not a billion-dollar valuation. It was not institutional approval. It was survival purchased through resourcefulness. The cereal boxes generated cash and attention, allowing them to remain in the game. That is the principle. When no institution funds you, resourcefulness becomes your first investor. When nobody endorses the complete future, solve the next problem that keeps the future alive. Do not ask, how do I prove the entire vision today? Ask, what can I complete, sell, publish, test, or document before this week ends? Waiting for support is often disguised as waiting for ideal scale. A man refuses to publish one video because he cannot yet imagine the full channel. He refuses to contact 10 prospects because he does not have a complete company. He refuses to build one case study because he does not yet possess the title he wants. He protects the fantasy of future greatness by avoiding the small evidence that could expose his current level. That avoidance feels intelligent because the dream remains perfect while it stays private. Once he acts, reality can judge him. The video may fail. The prospect may reject him. The prototype may reveal weak skill. The application may be ignored. But this is exactly why action creates power. It replaces imagination with information. Airbnb's founders did not begin with proof that the entire world would accept their model. They created proof that they could improvise under pressure. Survival itself became evidence of capacity. Machiavelli called this interaction between uncertainty and human capacity fortuna and virtue. Fortuna represents timing, chance, economic conditions, political conditions, and events outside your control. Virtue represents preparation, adaptability, judgment, discipline, and the capacity to act when conditions refuse to cooperate. Fortuna controls whether the door appears. Virtue controls whether you are ready when it does. Waiting for support is often an attempt to force fortune to remove danger before you develop capacity. It will not. You develop capacity while conditions remain imperfect. But survival is not the same as reputation. You can work, adapt, and become more capable while remaining invisible. Invisible competence is often treated as if it does not exist. The world cannot inspect your private conviction. It sees signals, it sees completed work, it sees measurable results, it sees who can demonstrate value and who can only describe potential. You may not be underestimated, you may still be unproven. That sentence is painful because your private identity and public reality may be far apart. You know your hunger, you know the nights you have spent thinking, you know the pressure you carry, you know what you believe you could do under the right conditions. But the market does not reward private intensity. An employer cannot reward value you never demonstrate. A customer cannot buy a skill he cannot inspect. An audience cannot trust work it has never seen. A network cannot recommend results that have never been completed. Machiavelli wrote, "Men in general judge more by the eyes than by the hands, for everyone can see, but very few have to feel." He was describing the political force of appearance and reputation. The personal lesson is not to create a false image. It is to understand that most people have no direct access to your inner reality. They judge through what becomes visible. Consider a competent employee who assumes good work will speak for itself. He solves difficult problems. He accepts assignments others avoid. He stays late. He protects the team from mistakes. But he documents nothing. Another employee presents results, controls meetings, and connects his name to measurable outcomes. The first man possesses value. The second controls its visibility. When promotion arrives, management remembers the framed evidence. The quiet man calls the system unfair. The system may be unfair, but his silence also surrendered the narrative. There are 3 layers of proof. First, private proof. You know you can perform the task. Second, documented proof. You can show what you produced and what changed. Third, distributed proof. The correct people can find and understand the evidence. Most invisible men stop at the first layer. They believe competence should automatically create recognition. It does not. The world is crowded, distracted, political, and imperfectly informed. Someone with less ability but clearer evidence may outrank you. Someone with weaker work but stronger distribution may earn more. Someone who controls the meeting may receive credit for what you completed privately. Narrative control does not mean lying. It means preventing reality from becoming invisible. Document the result. State your contribution accurately. Connect your name to measurable outcomes. Publish the case study. Show the before and after. Keep records. Build a portfolio. Make your competence legible. Do not become louder than your evidence. Make the evidence clearer than your explanations. And once your work becomes visible, a harder question appears. Whose advice deserves access to your decisions, and whose reaction must be removed from command? A man who rejects every opinion becomes blind. A man who accepts every opinion becomes directionless. The problem is not influence, the problem is surrender. Machiavelli understood that advice is useful only when judgment remains in command. He wrote, "A prince ought always to take counsel, but only when he wishes, not when others wish." The principle is not that you should become arrogant, isolated, or impossible to correct. It is that access to your attention must be governed. Most approval-dependent men cannot distinguish between information, advice, warning, and authority. A parent may give you accurate information about your financial obligations. That does not give the parent permanent authority over your career. A friend may identify a genuine weakness in your plan. That does not mean his entire worldview should control your direction. A mentor may recommend a path based on experience. That does not transfer responsibility for the outcome. A critic may expose a flaw. That does not earn control over your identity. The dependent man hears disagreement as a verdict. The strategic man extracts the useful information and leaves the emotional veto behind. This difference appears in the questions they ask. The dependent man asks, "Do you think I can do this?" He is not asking for analysis, he is asking for emotional permission. He asks, "Do you believe this will work?" The question is too broad to produce useful intelligence. No honest person can guarantee the outcome. So the answer becomes a reflection of the listener's personality, fear, incentives, and tolerance for risk. The strategic man asks different questions. What specific risk am I failing to see? Which part of this offer is unclear? What evidence would make this more credible? Where has this model failed before? What assumption should I test before investing more time? These questions preserve command. They invite intelligence without handing away authorship. A sovereign mind is not closed. It is governed. This is where many ambitious men deceive themselves. They claim to ignore everyone, but privately they remain controlled by one person. A father whose approval they never received. A mother whose fear they have absorbed. A friend who turns every ambition into a joke. An employer whose judgment has become their measure of value. An old rival they still want to impress. An online audience whose silence feels like rejection. The person may not be actively controlling you. Your anticipation of his reaction may be doing the work for him. Before you make a serious move, you mentally consult his face. You imagine the criticism. You rehearse the defense. You prepare explanations for a conversation that has not happened. Then your energy is spent before the work begins. That is hidden obedience. The first step is to identify the gatekeeper. Ask yourself one question: whose reaction do I mentally check before making a serious decision? Do not give the respectable answer. Give the true one. Then ask a second question. What decision have I delayed because I do not want to defend it? Write the decision plainly. Do not write, "I want to become successful." That is not a decision. Write, "I will publish my first video. I will apply for a new position. I will contact potential clients. I will build a portfolio. I will begin saving enough money to leave a bad environment." A vague ambition cannot be tested. A specific decision can. Then calculate the price of delay. Most men calculate the risk of action and ignore the risk of waiting. They ask what they might lose if they begin. They do not ask what they are already losing by remaining still. Count the months without practice. Count the applications never sent. Count the conversations avoided. Count the income never pursued. Count the evenings lost to distraction. Count the promises broken to yourself. Count the opportunities that required a level of preparation you never built. Delay does not preserve every option. Delay closes options quietly. It reduces time. It weakens urgency. It increases responsibility. It makes comfort more expensive to leave. Machiavelli warned in the Discourses, Weak states are always dubious in their resolves, and tardy resolves are always hurtful. He was writing about political decisions under pressure. The personal mechanism is the same. Indecision does not protect you from consequences. Indecision creates its own consequences. The man who repeatedly delays teaches himself that his commands are optional. Every broken promise becomes evidence against his own authority. Eventually, he no longer trusts his plans because he has watched himself abandon too many of them. This is why confidence cannot be built through affirmation alone. Confidence is memory. It is the memory of keeping a promise under pressure. It is the memory of acting before certainty arrived. It is the memory of surviving rejection without collapsing. It is the memory of completing what you once avoided. Confidence built from evidence survives isolation. Confidence built from praise disappears with the audience. Now separate data from veto. Take a sheet of paper and draw 2 columns. In the first column, write useful information they can provide. In the second, write authority they do not possess. A parent may understand your financial obligations. That information matters. The parent does not own your lifetime direction. A friend may see a weakness in your communication. That observation may be useful. The friend does not know the full limit of your capacity. An employer may accurately describe your current market value. That does not mean your current market value is permanent. A mentor may warn you that your strategy is weak. Listen carefully. But do not convert one warning into a lifelong command to remain still. Take the data. Reject the veto. Then choose one proof you can create within 7 days. The action must satisfy 5 conditions. It must be specific. It must be measurable. It must be finishable within 7 days. It must remain visible after completion. And it must not require anyone's approval. Publish 1 finished video. Complete 1 portfolio project. Contact 10 qualified prospects. Make 1 legitimate sale. Submit 5 serious applications. Build a working prototype. Save a defined amount of money. Write 1 professional case study. Do not choose become disciplined. Do not choose build confidence. Do not choose work harder. Those are identities disguised as actions. Choose evidence. The action should be small enough to finish and meaningful enough to change the conversation you are having with yourself. The purpose is not to prove your entire future in 1 week. The purpose is to break the link between another person's reaction and your behavior. 7 days is short enough to prevent endless preparation. It is long enough to produce something real. Most men will resist this step because measurable action removes their favorite protection. Ambiguity. As long as the goal remains vague, failure can remain vague. Once the action becomes measurable, reality can answer. You published or you did not. You contacted the prospects or you did not. You completed the case study or you did not. You saved the money or you did not. This may feel harsher than motivation. It is also more useful. Reality is not insulting you. It is informing you. If the result fails, study the failure. Did the offer lack value? Was the message unclear? Was the skill insufficient? Did you contact the wrong people? Did you underestimate the time required? Failure becomes dangerous only when ego prevents you from extracting information. A failed attempt produces more strategic value than an untested fantasy. The fantasy protects your identity. The attempt improves your position. Machiavelli repeatedly separated preparation from hope. In The Art of War, he wrote, "Men who want to do something ought first to prepare themselves with all industry." Preparation does not guarantee victory. It changes what you can do when conditions move. The salesman becomes less controlled by rejection after making enough calls to understand the pattern. The creator becomes less controlled by silence after publishing enough work to study response. The programmer becomes less controlled by self-doubt after building enough projects to inspect his actual skill. The employee becomes less controlled by one employer after documenting results and developing alternatives. The man becomes less controlled by one emergency after building savings. This is how support loses its power over you, not because you become emotionless, not because you convince yourself that you need nobody, not because every relationship becomes a contest. Support loses its power when your capacity becomes strong enough that its absence no longer stops movement. After choosing the 7-day proof, decide what to do before deciding what to say. Machiavelli recounts advice given during a political crisis. It was more important to consider what they were to do than what they were to say. Once the course was fixed, he explained, it became easier to find the words that declared the decision. Approval-dependent men reverse this sequence. They decide what to announce before deciding what to execute. They spend energy shaping the story. They imagine the praise. They rehearse the reveal. They describe a future that has not yet survived one difficult week. Then the emotional reward of speaking weakens the pressure to build. Correct the sequence. First decide, then act. Speak only when speech serves the action. Sometimes speech is necessary. You may need cooperation. You may need feedback. You may need to inform people affected by the decision. But stop using explanation as a substitute for movement. A man with proof speaks differently. He does not need to inflate the future because he can point to the present. He does not say, "I am going to become a creator." He says, "I published the first 10 pieces." He does not say, "I am building a business." He says, "I contacted the market, received these objections, and made the first sale." He does not say, "I deserve a promotion." He shows the problem solved, the revenue protected, the time saved, and the responsibilities already carried. Proof shortens explanation. Leverage reduces argument. Now build an evidence ledger. Every evening, record what you promised, what you completed, what failed, what the failure revealed, what you will change, and what comes next. Do not record feelings as proof. Feelings matter, but they are not evidence of execution. You may feel powerful and complete nothing. You may feel uncertain and still produce valuable work. Record behavior. The ledger creates an honest history. It prevents your mind from exaggerating both success and failure. Without records, one bad day can make you believe you have made no progress. One good day can make you believe the system is stronger than it is. The ledger shows the pattern. It reveals whether you are building authority over yourself or merely producing occasional bursts of effort. A man who repeatedly keeps small promises develops internal command. A man who repeatedly announces large plans and breaks them trains himself not to trust his own voice. This is the approval dependency audit. Name the gatekeeper. Name the delayed decision. Calculate the price of waiting. Separate useful information from authority. Choose one 7-day proof. Record the evidence. Complete this sentence. For the next 7 days, I will stop asking someone to approve a specific decision. I will create a measurable result as evidence. Make it concrete. Make it visible. Make it finishable. Do not turn it into a dramatic declaration. Quiet execution is more powerful than theatrical independence. Support is not the enemy. Useful support can accelerate progress. Mentorship can shorten the learning curve. Honest criticism can prevent expensive mistakes. Resources can increase speed. Allies can expand reach. The lesson is not to reject help. The lesson is to stop confusing help with permission. Accept advice. Accept information. Accept resources. Accept cooperation. Never outsource authority over your direction. You are not powerful because nobody influences you. You are powerful because you select influence without becoming ruled by it. You are not sovereign because you refuse every relationship. You are sovereign because your identity does not collapse when approval disappears. The unsupported man often believes his greatest wound is abandonment. But abandonment is not always the final condition. Sometimes it is the removal of an excuse. Nobody is coming to officially declare that you are ready. Nobody is required to certify that your idea is valid. Nobody must agree that your risk is justified. Nobody has to announce that you may begin. That sounds severe until you understand what it removes. It removes the gate. It removes the imaginary vote. It removes the belief that another person must recognize the future before you are allowed to build it. You do not need to punish the people who doubted you. You do not need to perform success for them. You do not need to build your life around revenge. Revenge is another form of approval dependency. It still makes the doubter the center of your decisions. Build because the work increases your capacity. Build because skill creates options. Build because savings create distance from exploitation. Build because documented proof changes your reputation. Build because every completed promise restores authority over yourself. Stop asking to be believed. Become easier to verify. Stop explaining your potential. Make it inspectable. Stop demanding recognition for hidden value. Create evidence that can survive without your emotional defense. Support may help you move faster. It must never decide whether you move. Before you leave this video, choose your 7-day proof and write it in the comments. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with the man who is still waiting for someone to tell him he is ready. For deeper, unfiltered work on power, discipline, human nature, and self-command, join the Patreon. Then close the video and begin. Do not ask for another opinion. Do not announce the plan to people who cannot improve it. Do not search the room for enthusiasm. Build the proof. Build the leverage. Build anyway. You are not abandoned. You are unowned.